Hi, welcome back to my channel and knitting podcast. Today I thought I would talk about the changes going into the new year and a bit about what I made in January and what's currently on my needles. One of the biggest changes going into this new year is that I've started working on a sheep farm. Actually, me and my fiance have taken over the farm for 3 months while the farmer is away. So that's quite fun to be able to work with the sheep and take care of them. I find as a knitter it's really fun to be a part of the process with the sheep, since they turn into the wool that I use for my hobby. So I think that's quite nice to be a part of, and also to be able to teach my son where things come from. So I thought I would show a little clip from the farm here. Another new thing heading into the new year is that I get to start a new bullet journal. This is the bullet journal from Knitters 2023, and this is my 3rd year having the bullet journal from Knitters. These are the 2 previous years, and it's just a really nice place. This is 2020, and you get each month, and then you can fill in what you're making that month. The name of the project, the yarn you're using, the date you started, the date you finished, what size, and how many grams of yarn you used. And I've done that now. This is 2022 version in April, and this is for this year. So I fill in what I'm making and what yarn I'm using and the date, and then how many grams of yarn I've used. And I'm quite a nerd when it comes to my hobby, so being able to fill in loads of details like this and nerding about exactly how many grams of yarn I used, what yarn type I used the most, and being able to look back to previous years and what I've made in the different months. I think that's quite fun. And even though I also have a knitting journal online, I think it's, for me, really nice to also be able to write it by hand. And when I think about projects to come and try to plan what I'm going to make, I think it's much easier for me to think when I can write it down instead of just having it online. So I really recommend having a knitting journal. I think that's really nice and fun, especially if you kind of like to nerd about your knitting and keep track and everything like that. I'm going to use my knitting journal today to try to be able to show what I've made in the order that I finished them. But before we move on to that, I thought I would talk about what I'm wearing. And I'm wearing the Agnete Cardigan. I think the Agnete Cardigan is the love of my life currently. I'm so happy I made it, and it's just like a cloud. It's so soft and light, and just I love it. Also, as always, petiteknit has made just a really simple and elegant piece with some amazing details that just get to speak by themselves. And I'm also so happy that I chose to knit it in this off-white color, so the stitch and all the details really get to shine on their own and really show up, since it's this lighter fabric. For this I used Drops Flora and Drops Kid Silk in the color of white, so that's quite a budget-friendly option. And I knit this in a size medium, which I always do for petiteknit. But yeah, it's just a really nice soft cloud, and it's giving me very much spring vibes. And I'm looking out the window now, and it's currently snowing. So it doesn't match too well together, that. But it's making me look forward to spring so much. So I really hope spring comes fast. But then I will move into what I currently have on my needles. First, I have 3 active projects currently, and as a knitter that prefers to have one project at a time, I don't really know how we ended up here, but I'm going to try to finish some of them off, so I only work on one at a time soon. But my first active one is this Selmas sleepsuit. This is by petiteknit, and I'm knitting it up in the smallest size, so it's quite small. I'm done with the hoodie and the yoke now, and I'm working on the body. I've gotten quite a lot of progress done, and it's moving along quite quickly. I find that garter stitch for me, and especially in this Selmas sleepsuit, it moves along quite quickly when I'm doing the hoodie and the yoke and the body. But when I get to actually doing the arms and the legs, I slow down so much and end up almost regretting casting it on. But I also know that when it's done, it's worth it. So I'm just gonna power through that. But first I'm going to have a good time with the body before having to do the arms and legs. So that's nice. I'm knitting it in Drops Lima in the color Powder Pink. And you will also see this episode that I'm knitting in quite a lot of pinks, because I'm making quite a few baby shower gifts, and finally my friends are starting to have girls, so I'm really having a great time being able to knit more feminine patterns and more pink colors, because previously I have been knitting in loads of neutrals and blue, because that's what I'm most drawn to, and me and all of my friends have had boys, so that's kind of been the natural way to go. But now I'm knitting with lots of pinks, and it makes me think that I really should get something pink in my wardrobe. So I'm kind of looking for a pattern that would fit, a sweater pattern that would fit a kind of pink color nicely. So if you have any recommendations, I'd love to hear them. But moving into my second active project, it's this Vårregnbody by studiogyth. She's a Norwegian designer that just closed down her shop now in January. So I got quite a lot of her patterns on sale, but it's this kind of holy yoke, and it has this, it's a round yoke with this feminine kind of structural pattern, and all the edges are I-cord. I'm having a really nice time knitting this up too, and it's the nice thing I find with knitting up more feminine patterns is that there are so many more designers who knit up nice patterns for girls, and for boys the only one that I found that I really like the patterns for and the look of the finished object is petiteknit. But for girls there are so many designers that make nice things and with also good patterns. So I'm a bit jealous of that. but it's fun to be able to widen my horizons a bit more and not just knit things by petiteknit. So that's my second active project. I can probably put a picture here so you get to know how the final piece is supposed to look, because I've just gotten started on the yoke a little bit. This is knit in Drops Flora in the color pink. So that's that. And then my third active project is not so active anymore. It was supposed to be the teddy bear sweater by petiteknit, and I knit it in Drops Soft Tweed in the off-white color. But for this I used scrap yarn, and I made a kind of fatal miscalculation. So I did all of this, and then I realized I just have this much yarn left, and that is not enough to finish this sleeve and make another one. This is, or was supposed to be, size 6 to 9 months. So my plan for this is to rip it all back, also rip back my Italian cast off, which I'm not looking forward to. But I need to rip it all back, frog it all, and then the plan is to start again with the new, with the same sweater, but in a smaller size. And I think the yarn will be enough then. But when looking at it, I'm also not sure if the gauge is quite right with this soft tweed. So I'll have to look at that and see if I actually have to change the whole project. But I kind of lost all my motivation for this. So it's just been laying around, waiting for almost half a month now for me to get any kind of motivation to rip it back and start over again. But it's not that fun to rip back a whole project just to make it again. So I think this will be laying around for some time more. But that's my third active project, but it's really turned into a unfinished object. But then I can move into my finished projects of January. It's quite clear what I've been knitting the last month. The focus has really been knitting baby stuff. You can kind of say I've been on a baby knitting marathon, because I'm knitting quite a few gifts for baby shower gifts, and you are on quite a strict deadline when knitting for babies, because the gifts have to be done before they grow out of it, and these gifts have to be done before they get born. So most of my attention has been going towards that. But I'll start off with my first finished object of 2023. I actually cast this on in 2022. This is the Friday Sweater Baby, and this was a project that I really wanted to make, and I waited for so long to be able to cast it on. When I was knitting my Christmas gifts, I went through my scrap yarn and I found this black color in Drops Flora, and I knew I had loads of white in Drops Flora, and I just could not get a Friday sweater out of my head with that color combination. So while I was knitting Christmas gifts, I was just looking at the yarn for this and longing to cast it on. But when I finished the Christmas gift, I finally was able to cast it on, and I must say it turned out just as nice as I'd hoped. And I really like this kind of classic look with the white and black stripes. And also I think the broken rib shows up quite nicely on white, so I'm very happy with that choice. This is the very smallest size. This is the 0 to 1 month, so it's a very small garment. But yeah, I think it's very nice, and it was very fun to cast on a project that was so fun after doing all that gift knitting at the end of the year. Then another project that I cast on at the very end of 2022 is this big baby blanket. It's the mini Augustins number 1 by Augustins. And as you can see, it's this big lace blanket with lots of different lace patterning, and it, at least I think it looks a bit intricate, and was a bit afraid to start working on it, but the pattern is very well explained, and I found that actually having so much different going on a baby blanket was quite nice. I've knitted a few baby blankets before, and I find that about halfway through it gets quite boring and repetitive to work on it, but halfway through this there was no repetition, kinda. There's one thing going on here, one thing going on here, one thing going on here, something going on here, and then this part, and something new all the time, so you never get the chance to get bored. I also quite liked that this was worked in the round, so you start in here and then you go out all the way until here, and then you have this border which is knit back and forth around the whole blanket and across all the stitches you had from the round. But I would say that this blanket is much easier than it looks, and the pattern is it's very good at explaining everything you have to do. And for me the hardest part was actually blocking it, because I wanted to block it so that it would stay, it would form a perfect circle. So when I was blocking it, I sat with needles and was very picky about how I wanted it to be. So I think I was in the process of laying it out to block for maybe an hour before I was happy with how it looked. But after blocking it, it's so nice and drapey and flowy. So I would really recommend this if you're thinking about knitting any blankets for baby. I knit this up in drops Puna in, I held 1 strand, and I thought that was very nice, but that is 100% alpaca yarn, so you have to decide how you feel about that. And I knit it in the color Peanut. So that's my second finished project of January, and a really big recommendation if you're having a baby. My third finished project of January and my first cast on in 2023 is this Willums overalls. As you can see, these are quite a bit bigger than all the baby knits I've been making, because these are for my son, and they're actually the only thing I made for my son in January. He was growing out of his previous ones, and these are my favorite pants for babies and kids, at least that I found so far. I think they are quite slim fitting without being tight, and then they cover the whole body, and the straps going across on the back so they don't slip off the shoulders, and the combination with all of that means that he can run around and play and everything like that, and the pants stay on and they don't hinder his movements at all, so they are a big favorite of mine. These are knit in the size 18 to 24 months, so that's quite long legs to make. But even though this is knit on size 3 millimeters, the yarn is a DK weight, so it goes by quite fast. So that's another great thing about these pants, especially when you're getting to the bigger sizes. So this is knit in Drops Merino Extra Fine in the color light grey, and I think it's the third pair of Willums overalls that we've had in Drops Merino Extra Fine in the color light grey. So you can safely say that this is a big favorite of ours. Then this was when I cast on this failure, and after realizing that this would be a failure, I decided to cast on some socks for myself. I've been wanting to knit socks for myself for 2 years now, and the first sock yarn I got has been in my stash for 2 years. And it's not this. The first sock yarn I got was for penny socks, but those are quite a big project, so I decided to go with Everyday Socks by petiteknit instead. The Willums are also by petiteknit. And yeah, I decided to knit myself some socks as kind of a reward, or a kind of pick-me-up from that failure of a project. So I finally got myself some socks. These are knit up in Drops Nord in the color Blush, and they're just very simple socks with a short row heel, which I quite like. And yeah, they're just really simple small socks, which was a nice pick-me-up after my failure project. And after that, that's when I really got into baby knitting. I got the yarn from my Agnete Cardigan and cast that on, and I very quickly realized that this would be a very big project to make, and would take quite a long time, and I would not really be able to work on it while my son was awake or while chasing him around the house. So I decided to work on multiple projects at a time. So I said to myself that I get to work on baby knitting during the day, and then after 8 p.m. my Agnete Cardigan is getting all my attention. So that was quite a strict time schedule I set myself. But it was quite nice, because then I would get to work on kind of different things, and this one did not get that monotonous. But the first thing I cast on while making the Agnete Cardigan was this teddy pants, also by petiteknit. As you can see, it's not gotten its face yet. I'm still thinking about whether to do that or not. I'm not that good at embroidery, so I'm not sure if I want to do it. I'm afraid it will ruin the fabric and just look ugly. But I also think if I was able to do it, that it would be quite nice. This is knit in the size 4 to 6 months, and it's knit in the color Peanut, and I used Drops Baby Merino. The teddy pants, like the Willums, are quite nice because they cover the whole body, and I really think the snap buttons that the teddy pants have are quite nice for fastening over the shoulders, and way faster to fasten up than buttons. So I quite like that, but the one thing about this project that I don't like that much is all the edges you have to pick up when you're done. Picking up stitches is my least favorite thing to do when knitting, along with fastening or weaving in my ends. So ending a project with picking up stitches for 8 different edges was not my favorite thing to do, but it looks very nice when it's all done, and I think picking up the edges is worth it, even though it's a bit of a drag to end the project on that note. But I'm quite happy with the teddy pants. But please help me decide in the comments if the teddy pants should get a face or not, because I really can't decide. After the teddy pants, and while working on this, I felt the teddy pants and this together, they were both quite big projects in the end. So I wanted kind of a palette cleanser. So I decided really tiny socks would be a good palette cleanser. So I made these Sunday socks. They are based off the Sunday Socks Junior by petiteknit, but they are a bit smaller than even the smallest size. I did everything exactly like the smallest size, but when deciding the length of the foot, I looked at some of my other patterns which have even smaller sizes, and then I measured the length according to those patterns before doing the decreases for the toe. So the smallest pattern in petiteknit's recipe, I think pattern is maybe 19 to 20, and these are more of a 16 to 17 EU sizes. So these are just really tiny and really cute socks, which I think was exactly the palette cleanser I needed. They are knit in drops Lima in the color chalk, I think it's called. And yeah, they're just really cute. And then after knitting those small socks, I was ready to do a bit of a bigger project. Again, this is all while knitting on the Agnete cardigan. I cast on for these Olive's tights. These are by Knitting for Olive, and I chose to do them with the foot. This is the size 1 to 3 months, and I find that the small size in the pattern, which is 1 to 3 months, I enjoy that the most with feet on. But when you get to the bigger sizes in the pattern, 6 to 6 months or 9 to 12 months, I usually don't do it with the foot, because I've done it with the foot before and I found out we don't get that much use out of it, because when the baby is learning to crawl or walk or stand or something like that, you don't want them to stand on this slippery wool, because then their feet just fall out under them and makes it a lot harder for them. But for the smallest size, I really enjoy it, because getting socks to stay on small babies or infants is almost impossible. So that's what I chose to do, and I knit this in drops baby merino in the color peanut, and it's just the really simple tights from Knitting for Olive, and a really nice staple to have in your baby's wardrobe. Just easy to slip on them. After finishing the Olive's tights, the end of the month was nearing, so I spent even more time knitting on my Agnete cardigan, because I thought if I just spend a little more time each day knitting on my Agnete, I will be able to get it done in January, and I thought that was quite a fun goal to set for myself. So from that point on, I also knitted on this during my son's naps. So I had 1 to 2 hours of knitting time on this during the day as well. So then I just had very small baby projects beside, and knitted up some hats. And the first of those were this Monday Balaclava. This is knit in Baby Supremo, some leftover yarn I got from my grandma, and this is the color pink. I knit the Monday Balaclava in 3 to 6 months, and I've knitted the baby balaclava a few times before, and the face has always been a bit loose for me. So this time I chose to pick up fewer stitches, and you can see the face hole is quite tight because I picked up fewer stitches, and I tried to cast on off as tightly as I could to see if that would help the problem, and I think it has. I won't know for sure until it starts getting used, but I think it has helped. The yarn for this is also incredibly soft, and I must say I'm kind of in love with this color. So if you know anything else with kind of this color, I would love to know, because I think if I'm making a sweater for myself in pink, this would be the color that I would want. And as it was leftover yarn for my grandma, I don't know where she got it or when she got it, or if it's even possible to get still. But if you know any yarn with this color, I would love to know. So that was the Monday Balaclava by petiteknit. After that, the month was really nearing an end, and I quite like to finish all my projects within the month so I don't carry them with me to the next month. That's just my way of thinking, I think. But I tend to choose a project that I know I can finish within the month. So I chose these two small hats. These are the Olive's ribhat by Knitting for Olive, and they are almost identical. I did cast on one stitch too little for the I-cord on this hat, while this one has the correct amount of stitches, so that's the only difference really. They are both knit using Drops Baby Merino, the color light grey, and I did make one change to the pattern. I've knit this up a few times before for my son, and I think I found out that my knitting gauge is a bit off when I'm making hats, like almost every hat. So I decided for this these ones to try to go up a needle size. So instead of knitting on 2.5 millimeters, I did it on 3 millimeters, and I do think they turned out a bit bigger than the size I was making. I did 0 to 3 months, and I think these are more of a 3 months and up maybe, but I also think my gauge was more correct using 3 millimeters than it has been using 2.5 millimeters. So I'm not sure if I'll continue doing it on 3 millimeters or if I'll try to improve my gauge on 2.5 millimeters. But I'm quite happy with these at least. So that was the last of my baby knitting for January, and then I spent the rest of the last one of these was actually finished on 31st of January. So the very last hours of January I spent knitting up the arm on this one, and I was able to cast it off just minutes before midnight. So that was quite a fun race to have against myself. But I'm very happy I did finish it in January, because now I can use it all of February. The only thing that's left is sewing in some buttons to go in these buttonholes over here. But sewing in buttons is also one of my least favorite things to do, because they have to line up with the buttonholes and everything like that, and I'm just so afraid to make any mistakes, so I usually put it off for quite some time. So we'll see when the buttons get sewn into this one. I think that might be a goal for February for me, to get buttons into this one, and also to kind of finish my baby knitting marathon, because 2 of the babies that I'm knitting for are going to be born in March or early March, so I have to kind of send my knits along soon, or they won't get there in time. So that's my plans for February, and I hope to see you next month. Bye!